The stars twinkled peacefully in the night sky over Earth's major observatories. It was just another routine evening for the astronomers until their instruments detected something unusual. Multiple objects, massive in size, were decelerating as they approached the outer edges of the solar system. At first, the scientific community thought they might be dealing with some strange astronomical phenomenon. But as more data poured in, the truth became impossible to ignore. The objects were ships, massive vessels of clearly artificial design, moving with purpose and precision. Within hours, every major government was alerted. Emergency meetings were called, and the United Nations convened a special session. Military forces worldwide were quietly put on high alert, though the public remained unaware of the approaching threat. The alien fleet took position just beyond Mars' orbit. Their ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. Sleek crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, each one larger than Earth's biggest cities. The first transmission came 3 days after their arrival. People of Earth, the message began, broadcast simultaneously on all frequencies in perfect English. We are the Dominion. Your civilization has been deemed sufficiently advanced for first contact, though still primitive by our standards. We offer you a choice: surrender and accept our guidance, or face extinction. The world's leaders gathered in an underground bunker beneath the Swiss Alps. Military commanders presented their assessments, and the outlook was grim. Earth's combined military might seem laughable compared to the alien fleet. Their scans showed energy readings that dwarfed humanity's most powerful nuclear weapons. General Thomas stood before the assembled leaders, his face grim as he presented the defensive capabilities of Earth. Our nuclear arsenals, our kinetic weapons, our laser defense systems. They're all we have. We must show them we won't go down without a fight. When Earth's military representatives transmitted their refusal to surrender, the alien response was immediate. Their laughter, or what passed for laughter in their communication, echoed through every speaker and device capable of receiving their transmission. Your weapons. The alien commander's voice dripped with amusement. We have watched your civilization. We know your capabilities. Your most powerful weapons are like children's toys to us. Our smallest scout ships could withstand your entire nuclear arsenal. To demonstrate their superiority, the aliens allowed one of their scout ships to approach Earth. It was smaller than their other vessels, but still impressive, about the size of an aircraft carrier. As it entered the atmosphere, Earth's military launched a tactical nuclear missile at it, with the aliens' permission, as a demonstration. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from space, but when the light faded, the alien ship remained completely unscathed. Not even its shield had flickered. The aliens broadcast their laughter again. You see, they transmitted. Your most powerful weapons cannot even scratch our defensive shields. Now witness true power. The scout ship fired a single energy burst at an uninhabited island in the Pacific. The island, several square miles in size, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no radiation. It was simply gone, leaving only a perfect circle of ocean in its place. In the underground bunker, silence fell. The world's leaders looked at each other with growing despair. Their armies, their weapons, their technology. Everything humanity had built seemed suddenly inadequate. But in that moment of darkness, a message arrived from a secure facility in Nevada. It was marked with the highest level of classification, and its contents made General Thomas's eyes widen. "Mr. President," he said, turning to the U.S. leader, "there's something you need to know about Project Lightbringer." The alien fleet maintained its position, confident in their superiority, unaware that deep beneath the Earth's surface, humanity was about to reveal that they had created something the aliens had never expected, a weapon that would make them regret their arrogance. As the first day of the invasion came to an end, humanity prepared for what would either be their finest hour or their last stand. The aliens continued to laugh, but soon They would learn that underestimating humanity was the last mistake they would ever make. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, in a facility so secret that only a handful of people knew of its existence, Project Lightbringer had been in development for the past 15 years. The laboratory was buried under half a mile of rock, protected by layers of security that made Area 51 look like a public park. Dr. James Miller stood before a massive device that pulsed with a soft blue glow. His creation looked deceptively simple, a series of rings surrounding a central chamber, with dozens of quantum processors running complex calculations. The room hummed with power as his team worked frantically at their stations. "We never thought we'd have to use it so soon," Miller said to General Thomas, who had just arrived via a secret underground rail system. The general stared at the device, his expression a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Explain it to me again, Doctor, in terms a soldier can understand." Miller picked up a pencil from his desk. "Conventional weapons, nuclear, kinetic, chemical, they all work by applying force or energy to break things apart." He snapped the pencil in half. "But our quantum weapon is different. It doesn't break things. It unmakes them." He walked to a testing chamber where a thick block of tungsten sat on a pedestal. "The aliens use energy shields that can absorb or deflect any amount of conventional force, but our weapon doesn't use force at all. It manipulates the quantum field itself." Miller activated a scaled-down version of the weapon. The tungsten block began to glow, then simply vanished. No explosion, no sound, no debris. It simply ceased to exist. "We discovered that reality itself has a frequency," Miller continued. "Everything vibrates at the quantum level. Our weapon changes that frequency. When it hits something, it phases that matter out of our reality. No shields can stop it because it's not an energy weapon. It changes the fundamental nature of matter itself." General Thomas watched the demonstration with growing interest. "And you're sure this will work on their ships?" "Matter is matter, General. Their shields are designed to stop energy and force. This is neither. It's like trying to use a bulletproof vest to stop a ghost." In another part of the facility, Dr. Lisa Banks was calibrating the targeting systems. She had helped design the quantum matrices that made the weapon possible. "The only limitation is power," she explained to the general. "Right now, we can only generate enough energy to target something the size of a small ship. Anything bigger, then we better hit something small enough to prove it works," the general replied. "If we can take out one of their ships, maybe they'll think twice about their invasion." The facility shook slightly as another alien demonstration of power reached them even through their deep underground shelter. The team worked with renewed urgency. "There's one more thing," Miller said, his voice serious. "This weapon, it doesn't just destroy. Whatever it hits, it removes from existence completely. No debris, no radiation, nothing left behind. We're not just killing them. We're erasing them from reality itself." The general was quiet for a moment. "Given what they're doing up there, Doctor, I don't think anyone will lose sleep over that." The team spent the next hours preparing the weapon for its first real test. They had never fired it at anything larger than test objects, and the power requirements were enormous. One shot would drain enough electricity to power a small city for a year. As they worked, Miller couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The aliens had come expecting primitive brutes with crude weapons. Instead, they would face something they had never imagined possible, a weapon that broke the very rules of reality. "System is charged to 80%, Dr. Banks announced. "If we're going to do this, it needs to be soon." The general picked up a secure phone. "Mr. President, Project Lightbringer is ready for its first field test. Request permission to engage the next alien ship that comes within range." The response was immediate. "Permission granted. Show them what humanity is capable of." The weapon hummed louder, its blue glow intensifying. Soon, the aliens would learn that their laughter had been premature. Humanity was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most primitive species could create the most devastating weapons. The alien scout ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a predator stalking its prey. Its crystalline surface gleamed in the sunlight as it positioned itself above the Nevada desert. The aliens had chosen this location for another demonstration of their power, unaware they were playing directly into humanity's hands. In the underground facility, Project Lightbringer's team watched the ship's approach on their monitors. The weapon's quantum rings spun faster, their blue glow now almost blinding. Dr. Miller's hands moved across the control panel, making final adjustments. "Target is within optimal range," Dr. Banks announced, her voice tense. "Their shields are at full power. They're probably expecting us to try another nuclear strike." General Thomas stood at the command station, his finger hovering over the firing authorization button. "All personnel, clear the testing chamber. Quantum containment fields at maximum." The alien ship hovered arrogantly, its weapons powering up for another display of superiority. Their transmission carried the now familiar tone of mockery. "Observe, primitives, as we reduce another portion of your desert to glass." "Quantum field stabilized," Miller reported. "Power at 98%. It's now or never, General." The general pressed the button. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a barely visible ripple distorted the air above the facility. The beam was invisible to the naked eye, but its effect was immediate and devastating. The alien ship's shields flared briefly, trying to counter an attack they weren't designed to stop. The quantum wave passed through them, as if they weren't there. When it struck the hull, reality itself seemed to bend. The ship didn't explode. It didn't break apart. Instead, starting from the point of impact, it began to simply disappear. The process took less than 3 seconds. Where once had been a mighty vessel of advanced technology, now there was only empty sky. In the facility, alarms blared as the weapon's power cores began to cool down. "Target completely removed from our reality," Dr. Banks confirmed, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and horror. "No debris, no radiation, no trace it ever existed." The alien response was immediate. Their main fleet, still holding position near Mars, fell silent for several long moments. When they finally transmitted again, their tone had changed, but not in the way humanity expected. An interesting trick, the alien commander's voice boomed. Some kind of localized disintegration beam, perhaps. Impressive for primitives, but clearly limited in scope. "You cannot possibly have the power to affect our larger vessels." General Thomas turned to Miller. "They think it's just another type of destruction weapon. They don't understand what they just saw." "Their arrogance is blinding them to the truth," Miller replied. "They can't conceive that we've developed something beyond their understanding." The alien fleet launched another scout ship, larger than the first. Their transmission was filled with renewed confidence. "Let us see your weapon handle a more substantial target. This vessel's shields are 10 times stronger." In the command center, Miller and his team began the recharging process. "It'll take an hour to build up enough power for another shot," he warned. "The energy requirements increase exponentially with the target size." "Then we better make it count," the general replied. "Because after this, they'll either retreat or they'll throw everything they have at us." As the weapon recharged, the alien ship took position, its hull gleaming with enhanced shield energy. The aliens were still laughing, still convinced of their superiority. They believed they had seen humanity's best weapon, and they were prepared for it. They didn't realize that their very understanding of physics was about to be challenged. The weapon wasn't just destroying their ships, it was unwriting them from existence itself, bypassing the very laws of conservation of matter and energy. As the quantum rings began to spin up again, Dr. Miller watched the power readings climb. The aliens would soon learn that sometimes the most devastating weapons didn't come with flash and thunder, but with the quiet certainty of universal laws being rewritten. The second test was about to begin, and this time, there would be no doubting the power humanity had unleashed. Earth's orbital defense stations were falling one by one. The alien fleet, enraged by the loss of their second scout ship, had launched a full-scale assault. Their energy weapons sliced through satellites and space platforms like paper, while their larger vessels positioned themselves for a ground invasion. Deep in the Nevada facility, alarms blared constantly. Dr. Miller's team worked frantically to solve their power problem. The quantum weapon had proven its effectiveness, but its massive energy requirements left them vulnerable between shots. "We need more power," Miller shouted over the noise of overloading generators. "The weapon works, but we can't defend against their main fleet if we can only fire once every hour." Dr. Banks rushed in with a tablet displaying new calculations. "James, look at this. What if we modify the quantum field oscillation? Instead of trying to erase their entire ships at once, we could create a cascading effect." Miller studied the numbers, his eyes widening. "Like a quantum chain reaction." "Lisa, that's brilliant. It would use less initial power but achieve the same result." Above them, another orbital defense platform exploded. The aliens had destroyed 70% of Earth's space-based defenses. Their transmission was no longer amused. It was angry. "Your parlor trick cost us 2 ships," the alien commander announced. "For this, we will not merely conquer your world. We will reduce your cities to ash." General Thomas entered the laboratory, his uniform covered in dust from a nearby impact. "Please tell me you have good news, Doctor. We're running out of time." Miller pointed to their modified design. "We can reconfigure the weapon to use less power per shot. Instead of trying to erase their ships all at once, we create a quantum cascade. Once it starts, their own mass will feed the reaction." "How long to make these modifications?" 2 hours, Banks replied. "Maybe less if we—" A massive explosion rocked the facility, cutting power for several seconds before the backup generators kicked in. Above ground, the aliens had begun their first ground assault. Their smaller ships were launching pods containing ground troops. "You have 1 hour," the general said grimly. "After that, we'll be overrun." The team worked at breakneck speed, modifying the quantum rings while listening to reports of the battle above. The alien ground forces were unlike anything Earth's military had ever faced. Biomechanical units that shrugged off conventional weapons. Miller's hands flew across the control panels, rewiring circuits while Banks reprogrammed the quantum matrices. They could hear the sounds of combat getting closer to their underground sanctuary. 50 minutes, the general shouted. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster." Banks connected the last power coupling. Quantum field recalibrated. Power systems modified. "We're ready for a test, but we have no way to know if it'll work until we fire." "It'll work," Miller said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It has to." The facility shook again as alien weapons struck closer to their location. Security teams were reporting contact with enemy forces in the upper levels. "Power at 60% and climbing," Banks announced. "With the new configuration, that should be enough for a shot at one of their medium-sized ships." The general received a message and his face darkened. "Their main fleet is moving into position for orbital bombardment. If this doesn't work—" "It'll work," Miller repeated, more firmly this time. He looked at his creation, the quantum rings now pulsing with a different rhythm. "We've changed the rules of the game. They just don't know it yet." The weapon hummed to life, its modified field generators creating new patterns of energy they'd never seen before. On their screens, they could see an alien destroyer moving into firing position above their facility. "Power at 80%, Banks called out. "Field stability nominal. Quantum cascade sequence primed." Miller took a deep breath. Everything they'd worked for came down to this moment. If their modifications worked, they had a chance to save Earth. If they failed— "Target locked," the general announced. "On my mark." The destroyer's weapons began to glow, preparing to fire on their position. The moment of truth had arrived, and humanity's fate hung in the balance. "Fire!" General Thomas's command rang through the control room. The modified quantum weapon activated with a different sound than before, not the usual high-pitched whine, but a deep, resonating hum that made everyone's teeth vibrate. The beam lanced upward through their reinforced shaft, invisible but distorting the air as it passed. On their monitors, they watched as it struck the alien destroyer. The ship's shields flared brilliantly, trying to defend against something they weren't designed to stop. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then it began. A small point on the destroyer's hull started to fade, like a photograph slowly being erased. But unlike previous shots, this effect began to spread, accelerating as it consumed more mass. Quantum cascade initiated, Dr. Banks announced, her eyes fixed on the readings. The reaction is self-sustaining. It's working exactly as we calculated. The alien ship's crew noticed too late what was happening. Their transmission was cut off mid-sentence as the cascade reaction consumed their communication systems. Within 30 seconds, the massive destroyer had completely vanished from existence. The alien fleet reacted with unprecedented fury. Their remaining ships began firing indiscriminately, but their previous precise formation had broken down. For the first time, there was chaos in their ranks. "They're panicking," the general observed. "How soon can we fire again?" Miller checked the readings. 20 minutes with the new configuration. The cascade effect uses less initial power, but we still need time to build up the charge. Above ground, the alien ground forces had suddenly stopped advancing. Their biomechanical troops stood motionless, as if receiving new orders. Then, to everyone's surprise, they began to retreat. "They're pulling back," a military observer reported. "All ground forces are returning to their landing ships." The alien commander's voice boomed through their communications, but this time there was no trace of amusement or arrogance. "What have you done? What kind of abomination have you created?" "Power at 40% and climbing," Banks reported. "We'll be ready for another shot in 15 minutes." The alien fleet was reorganizing, but differently now. Their largest ships were pulling back, while medium and smaller vessels moved forward as a screen. They were adapting, trying to minimize potential losses to the quantum weapon. "They're learning," Miller observed, "but they still don't understand what they're facing. They think they can overwhelm us with numbers." The facility shook as some alien ships maintained their bombardment, but their attacks were less coordinated now. Fear had replaced their previous confidence. "Power at 70%, Banks called out. 10 minutes to full charge. General Thomas received new reports from around the world. Other nations were taking advantage of the aliens' disarray, launching counterattacks against their ground forces. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity was pushing back. Multiple alien ships moving into range. The targeting officer announced, "They're trying to saturate our firing arc with smaller vessels." Miller smiled grimly. They don't realize that the cascade effect works better against tight formations. The closer they pack themselves, the faster the reaction will spread. The weapon's hum deepened as it approached full power. On their screens, they could see dozens of alien ships positioning themselves above the facility, their weapons charged. "Power at 90%, Banks announced. "Field stability optimal. The cascade effect should spread through their entire formation." The alien commander made one final transmission. "Your weapon is an offense against nature itself. You cannot hope to control such power. Surrender now, or we will destroy everything within 1,000 miles of your facility." General Thomas looked at Miller. "Doctor." Miller's hand hovered over the firing control. "Nature," he said quietly. "We're not defending nature. We're rewriting its rules." The quantum weapon powered up for its third shot, its modified systems humming with contained power. Above them, the alien fleet waited, their ships packed together in what they thought was an overwhelming show of force. They were about to learn that sometimes the greatest weapon isn't the one that causes the most destruction, but the one that makes the enemy question everything they thought they knew about the universe. The quantum cascade ripped through the alien formation like a wave erasing marks in the sand. Ship after ship began to fade from existence, the effect spreading faster as it consumed more mass. The aliens' tight formation, intended to overwhelm the facility, instead ensured their own destruction. Cascade reaction spreading beyond initial targets, Dr. Banks reported, her voice filled with awe. The effect is multiplying faster than our projections. In just under 2 minutes, every alien ship within a 5-mile radius had vanished. The quantum distortion left behind slowly dissipated, revealing empty sky where dozens of vessels had been moments before. The remaining alien fleet erupted into chaos. Ships began breaking formation, trying to put distance between themselves. Their once coordinated assault dissolved into panic as the reality of their situation finally set in. "They're scattering," General Thomas observed. "For the first time, they're afraid." Miller watched the power reading stabilize. The modified weapon is recharging faster than expected. The cascade effect actually returns some energy to our systems. We'll be ready to fire again in 12 minutes. Worldwide, reports started flooding in. The alien ground forces were in full retreat, abandoning their positions and rushing back to their transports. Their biomechanical troops, once seemingly invincible, now moved with obvious desperation. All remaining alien ships are pulling back to minimum safe distance, the radar operator announced. They're maintaining at least 10 miles between each vessel. The alien commander's next transmission came through with noticeable distortion, as if their communication systems were struggling to maintain coherence. This is impossible. You've weaponized a fundamental force we didn't even know could be controlled." Dr. Banks looked up from her console. "Their ships are showing unusual energy readings. The quantum cascade seems to have affected their understanding of our capabilities. They're trying to modify their shields, but they're doing it wrong, making them even more vulnerable to our weapon." General Thomas straightened his uniform. "Then it's time we take the fight to them. Contact all remaining military forces. Tell them to prepare for a coordinated counterattack." The weapon continued its accelerated recharge cycle. On the monitors, they could see alien ships attempting various defensive formations, each one more desperate than the last. Some began firing randomly into space, as if trying to hit an invisible attacker. "Power at 80%, Miller announced. "But look at this. Their erratic movements are actually making them perfect targets for the cascade effect. Their panic is working against them." Around the world, humanity's remaining forces rallied. Fighter jets scrambled, carrying conventional weapons that were now supported by the mere threat of the quantum weapon. The aliens' previous invulnerability had been shattered, replaced by a very real fear of annihilation. Multiple alien ships attempting to power up their faster-than-light drives. The radar operator called out. "They're trying to escape." But their retreat was disorganized. Ships collided in their panic, their once perfect coordination completely broken. The mighty invasion force that had laughed at humanity's weapons was now falling apart. "Weapon at full power," Banks reported. "Ready to fire on your command." General Thomas looked at the tactical display, where the alien fleet was scattered across Earth's orbit. "Target their command ship. Let's show them exactly what happens when you underestimate humanity." The quantum weapon fired again, its beam reaching out to the largest remaining alien vessel. The cascade effect was even more dramatic this time, spreading through the command ship's mass in seconds before jumping to nearby support vessels. "Chain reaction expanding exponentially," Miller reported. "The effect is feeding off their own power systems now." The alien fleet's formation completely collapsed. Ships began jumping away in random directions, while others fired desperately at nothing. Their mighty armada, which had seemed unstoppable just hours ago, was now in full retreat. As the quantum cascade continued its work, Dr. Miller watched the monitors with a mix of pride and solemnity. They had created something that changed the fundamental rules of warfare, and the universe would never be the same. The counterattack had begun, and humanity was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most devastating response comes not from matching force with force, but from changing the rules of engagement entirely. The last alien ship vanished from Earth's orbit in a flash of quantum distortion. After 6 hours of relentless counterattacks, humanity had achieved what seemed impossible just days ago. Total victory over a technologically superior invasion force. In the Nevada facility, Dr. Miller and his team watched as the final readings settled. The quantum weapon powered down, its blue glow dimming for the first time since the battle began. The silence that followed felt almost unnatural after so many hours of constant action. Final scan complete, Dr. Banks announced. No alien signatures detected within the solar system. They're gone. General Thomas received reports from around the world. The alien ground forces had either been erased by the quantum cascade or had fled in their remaining transport ships. Their biomechanical troops lay deactivated, already being collected for study by research teams. Casualty reports coming in, the general said solemnly. We lost 40% of our orbital infrastructure, and 15 major cities suffered significant damage. But compared to what could have happened, he left the thought unfinished. The first transmissions from other alien civilizations arrived within hours of the victory. Their messages were markedly different from the Dominion's arrogant demands. These were diplomatic communications, filled with careful respect and obvious caution. They're requesting permission to send ambassadors, the communications officer reported. All of them are emphasizing their peaceful intentions. Miller studied the data from the weapon's performance. The quantum cascade effect reached further than we anticipated. Other civilizations must have detected what happened. They saw what we can do. In the days that followed, Earth began its recovery. The alien technology left behind provided insights that advanced human science by decades. But more importantly, humanity's position in the galaxy had changed fundamentally. We're receiving long-range communications from at least 12 different alien species, Dr. Banks reported a week later. They all want to establish diplomatic relations. Some are offering trade agreements, technological exchanges, but all of them are being extremely polite. The facility had become a hub of activity, with scientists from around the world studying the quantum weapon's effects. Miller's team worked to understand the full implications of what they'd created. The weapon didn't just defeat them, Miller explained to a panel of world leaders. It challenged their entire understanding of physics. We proved that a supposedly primitive species could discover and control something they hadn't even imagined possible. The United Nations established a new department specifically for extraterrestrial relations. Earth's first official diplomatic message to the galaxy was carefully worded. We seek peaceful cooperation with all species, but we will defend ourselves if threatened. The choice of how we interact is yours. 3 months after the invasion, the first alien ambassador arrived, not from the Dominion, but from a peaceful federation of worlds. Their message was clear. Earth had earned its place among the stars, not through conquest, but by demonstrating that technological advancement could come in unexpected forms. They're calling it the quantum revolution, Dr. Banks told Miller as they watched the diplomatic proceedings. Our discovery has sparked a whole new field of physics research across the galaxy. The Dominion never returned to Earth. Reports from distant space suggested they had withdrawn to their core systems, their reputation as invincible conquerors shattered. Other alien species began sharing stories of how the Dominion had bullied and subjugated them, until humanity showed them that even the mightiest could fall. 1 year after the invasion, Earth had established peaceful relations with 27 alien civilizations. The quantum weapon remained a silent guardian that ensured humanity's voice would be heard in galactic affairs. But it was humanity's ingenuity, not just their weapon, that earned them respect. As Dr. Miller stood at his laboratory window, watching the sun set over the Nevada desert, he reflected on how one discovery had changed everything. The aliens had laughed at humanity's primitive weapons, never imagining that this supposedly backward species would rewrite the laws of physics to defend itself. The stars above no longer seemed distant and threatening. They were now a frontier of opportunity, where humanity had earned its place not through overwhelming force, but through the power of human innovation and determination. The laughter had stopped, and respect had taken its place.